Welcome to Living in Beauty. It's Friday, June 9th, 2017, and we're in Yellowstone National Park for a few weeks celebrating with a family reunion. One new domestic skill I've contributed to our Living in Beauty lifestyle is providing the necessary morning beverage. Carmen claims I make the best coffee she's ever had. I'd blush if it weren't true. In the last 15 months, I've reached Java enlightenment, and the effects have facilitated better health habits. As the early riser, I was elected barista. Before Living in Beauty, I retired to bed between 9 and 10 p.m. and woke up at 6 a.m. to start my day. And before Living in Beauty, Carmen retired around 3 a.m. and woke up about 10 a.m. to start her day. Even on weekends, I'd leash Pico de Gallo, and we'd quietly slip out the door and walk to Starbucks for my cup of medium-strength black coffee. Hours later, Carmen would rise and brew her own full pot of strong coffee and whiten it with copious amounts of whole cream. Once we started living on the road, our different circadian rhythms and polar opposite coffee preferences pretty much remained static, confirming my philosophy that wherever you go, there you are. Place doesn't change people as much as people change places. But when I began mastering my brewing technique, Carmen started waking up earlier and earlier to the intoxicating aromas of coffee wizardry. Here are my challenges. Due to limited space, I needed one way to brew coffee. One coffee we both liked. A way to keep the brew fresh and hot for hours. It had to be compact and not dominate our counter space. And a low tech is a must, since our power is often limited. On non-travel days, due to our heart conditions, we have to settle for decaf. But on moving days, which begin early, for Carmen at least, a nice carafe of screaming caffeinated makes for a safer and more pleasant travel with Little Miss Sunshine. Good brewed coffee is hard to find when you're living on the road, and coffee shops are usually 10 to 20 miles away, and even further when we dry camp or boondock off-grid in secluded and isolated places. When we were on BML land a few weeks ago, the nearest place was about 5 miles away, and today at Grovant Campground, we're 11 miles from the nearest commercial area in Moose, Wyoming, population 18. There are many secrets to brewing a great cup of coffee, but I've found it's the orchestration of best practices that makes a Java masterpiece time after time. Here's a list of the items we use. Good whole bean coffee, coffee grinder, teapot, French press, thermometer, timer, spoon, and carafe. At the very core of my process is good coffee. High quality, fresh, whole beans that I've properly stored and never in the refrigerator. The beans are best kept in an airtight container in a cool, dark place. And should go without saying, no pre-grinding at the store, because the rich flavor and aroma begin to dissipate within minutes of grinding. The brand we like is Rutamata Organic Decaffeinated Dark Roast Coffee, which also comes in regular, not decaffeinated. Now, we're Costco members, and both of these are available at a good price at Costco.com. Rutamaya coffee comes in a special bag that is not only airtight, but it uses a one-way valve that slowly lets carbon dioxide gas out of the bag while preventing oxygen from getting in. And there is no degradation of freshness of our beans over the weeks it takes to go through a 2-pound bag. Now, we like this decaf roast because the taste is incredible, and it uses the Swiss water method, not chemicals, to decaffeinate. The beans to water ratio is a very personal matter based on how strong one likes his or her coffee. Once we were opposite in our tastes for strength, but we've slowly reached a compromise. We experimented a lot and agreed on a dark, rich coffee, which, at first, I would add a splash of hot water to adjust to my taste. But over time, maybe due to the low acidity of this process, I'm enjoying it at full strength. And Carmen now takes hers black without heavy cream. I use 6 tablespoons of beans to 34 ounces of fresh filtered water, a ratio of 1 tablespoon of beans for every 6.5 ounces of water. Some use more, some use less. After finding the right coffee, my next decision was the grinder. Of the 2 major categories of coffee grinders, blade or burl, I decided on a ceramic conical burl grinder. I wanted to use the French press brewing method, which requires an even grind size. And pretty much everyone agrees that a blade grinder's heat destroys flavor. There are hundreds of choices for a burl grinder, from small to large and electric to hand ground. Since we never know where we'll be or if we'll have access to electricity, I decided on a hand grinder made in Japan called the Porlex JP30 stainless steel coffee grinder. It has the perfect size capacity for our French press, comes apart quickly, cleans easily, and is stainless steel. It takes under 2 minutes to grind my beans, and I find it a pleasant part of my morning. As I grind, releasing the umami-esque aromatics on their path to Carmen's olfactory sensory neurons, I listen for her to stir. For a French press, the coffee grounds must be very coarse, about like coarse breadcrumbs or coarse sea salt. A ground too fine, it's a gooey mess of coffee because the grounds will seep through the strainer. Because road travel is our lifestyle, potholes, speed bumps, and braking for moose, glassware is not advised. So instead of the traditional glass French press, I use a Sakura French press stainless steel 34-ounce coffee maker. Here's my process. First, I make sure the French press is totally clean. Very important. I measure the beans, but before grinding, I put the kettle on and wait for it to boil or whistle. Now once it's boiling, I turn off the heat and fill the French press about half full to preheat it. Then toss a thermometer into the teapot spout and start grinding. Once the beans are ground, I pour the preheat water out of the French press and toss in the ground beans. And then I check the temperature of the water and make sure it's 197 degrees. If not, I wait for it to cool or put it back on the stove. When the water is 197 degrees, I start the timer using the clock app on my iPhone and pour the hot water on the grounds, filling it 1/4 of the way. Then I wait for 30 seconds for what is called the bloom to happen. The bloom is when the carbon dioxide gas trapped in the beans is released, producing a better tasting coffee. After 30 seconds, using a spoon, I break the bloom crust by gently stirring the water and the grounds, and then I fill with the remaining hot water and cover. At 4.5 minutes, I slowly press down the strainer to almost the bottom, but not all the way. This stops the strainer from disturbing the grounds that have settled on the bottom. I immediately pour the brew into a thermos carafe to preserve the flavor and temperature. We love our Zorashi 1.5-liter stainless steel vacuum carafe, but there are hundreds to choose from. No overstatement. The brew stays fresh and hot in that carafe for hours. Now, if it's a travel day, we will make a place in the truck for a full, fresh carafe. And nowadays, we don't even entertain the motion of asking our Garmin where the coffee shops are, because it just doesn't get any better than this. Thanks so much for joining us at Living in Beauty. If you like this post and want to be notified when a new one is released, please enter your email address and click the follow button at the bottom of this page. Special thanks goes to Gabe Miller, my nephew, for working so hard to plan this family reunion at Yellowstone National Park, where we will have 18 family members gathering from all over the country, and even one from Taiwan. Thanks, Gabe. Well, that's it. Have a great week.